Well, last week I asked the question, what gets you out of bed in the morning? And I want to start off today asking you another question. When was the last time, you got out of bed in the morning, you rolled out of bed after hitting snooze 10 times, you finally got out, and you went into the restroom and you looked in the mirror and you said to yourself, wow. Not like, whoa, wow, like, wow. I feel so rested. I heard a couple chuckles there because you're like, I've never done that. You're like, I don't talk to myself in the mirror in the morning, Travis. That's a little weird. But for some of you, you're like, I've never done that. Or for some of you, you're like, the feeling of being rested on Monday morning it's a distant and rare memory. What if I were to tell you that it's possible to wake up every Monday morning, look in the mirror and go, wow, I feel so rested. I'm so ready for the week that's ahead of me. That's what I want to talk about today. How can you love your weekend in such a way that you'll wake up in the morning and feel that way, ready to conquer the week that is in front of you and do the work that you are wired to do? And to talk about this, we're going to first have to talk about the epidemic that has infected people since almost the beginning of time. And it's a brain-paralyzing, heart-crushing, soul-sucking epidemic that has been around and a part of the human story for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years. And it's an epidemic that I call the doing disease. If you're taking notes, that's the title of the teaching today, the doing disease. And it's an epidemic that all of us, probably in some way, shape, or form, I'm a recovering doing diseaser, I don't know. I'm recovering from this doing disease epidemic. And the doing disease is a life that always keeps doing, always keeps moving, always keeps producing, and it's unwilling to stop, it's unwilling to be still, and it's unwilling to say enough. The doing disease is a life that always keeps doing, always keeps moving, always keeps producing. It's a life that is unwilling to stop, unwilling to be still, and unwilling to say enough. And it's fairly easy to diagnose somebody who has come down with the doing disease. The thing that you need to do, the litmus test of sorts, to determine if someone has this disease is just asking them a simple question. And that question is, how are you? That question alone sort of reveals if someone has come down with the doing disease, because someone who has come down with the doing disease has a sort of automated response that is triggered by that single question. And they go, I'm good, but man, I am so, say it with me, busy. I'm so busy. I'm so busy. And we say we're so busy because busy in America is sort of like the new cool. Busy, at least in America, has become the sign of your value and of your worth. I mean, think about it. When was the last time you asked somebody, hey, how are you doing? And they're like, so bored. I have no emails coming through. I have no projects I'm working on. I slept 11 hours yesterday, and then I woke up and watched Netflix for another 11. No, even if that were true, you would be like, man, so busy. Woo, life is coming at me. It's just nuts. We have a busy problem, and I say we have a busy problem in America, especially because statistics don't lie. Americans are the most overworked people in the world. Americans work 137 more hours per year than the Japanese. They work 200 more hours per year than the British, and we work 499 more hours a year than the French. Classic France, all right? One French man. Yeah. We work more than anyone else in the world, and what's funny is we pride ourselves on it. We're like, I'm American, I'm busy all the time, right? And what's interesting to me is that research has shown again and again and again that being busy and being productive are not always the same thing. You can be busy, but not be productive. As a matter of fact, one study out of Stanford shows that our productivity per hour declines sharply after working 50 hours a week. And if you work over 55 hours a week, there's pretty much no point in working anymore. So all of you are like, I work 70 hours a week because I'm a busy American and I'm awesome and I have value. Well, here's the bad news. You are accomplishing as much working 70 hours a week. These studies are showing you're accomplishing as much, 70 hours per week, as someone who works 55 hours per week. It's time to get your time back. It's time to have a more balanced, restful life. But not only is it not productive, it's simply not healthy, is it? Like our busyness just is not healthy. The Chinese picked up on this, and they have a word for busy, and it's made up of two parts. And the two parts of their word for busy are heart and kill. So to the Chinese, when you say busy, they understand that to mean killing your heart. To be busy is to kill your heart. It reminds me of what the theologian Dallas Willard said. He said, busyness is the greatest enemy to spiritual life. Busyness may be the greatest enemy to spiritual life, which, if I were the devil, I think that might be my objective. Not to make you bad, but to make you busy, because the latter would be far more easier. And if I could just distract you enough, you'll never actually get where you want to go. Mahatma Gandhi, he said this: there has to be more to life than merely increasing the speed. There has to be more to life than merely increasing the speed. The doing disease is a real epidemic that I'm sure some of us, if we're honest, have come down with. But I have good news, and that good news is that although this is an ancient disease, there is an even more ancient cure that I want to talk about today. And it's simple. It's not always easy, but it is simple and something you could activate as soon as this week. And that ancient remedy to this ancient epidemic is something we find in the scriptures called the Sabbath. And I want to talk about the Sabbath, and I want to kind of unpack what this thing is, because maybe if you've been in a place like this and listened to a guy like me before, you've maybe heard of the Sabbath, but never really understood, one, what is the Sabbath? And then two, why is the Sabbath given to us as a gift? Why should we care about practicing Sabbath? And maybe you've been to churches before, and you're used to preachers telling you that you need to do more. I have really, really good news. Today, I'm not going to tell you that you need to do more. I'm actually going to encourage you to do less. Because I believe that if you're going to speed up in the right way in your life, you've got to learn the art of slowing down. And so the Sabbath is introduced to us in Genesis chapter 2. In Genesis chapter 1, God is creating all of creation, the heavens, the earth, the water, the land, the animals, humans, the cosmos, and the universe. Like he's creating it all. And then on the seventh day, we see something interesting happen. It's in Genesis chapter 2, verse 1 through 3. It says this: so the creation of the heavens and the earth and everything in them was completed. On the seventh day, God had finished his work of creation, and so he rested from all his work. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because it was the day when he rested from all his work in creation. So I want to kind of unpack, what is the Sabbath? And to understand what the Sabbath is, we're going to unpack and kind of take apart and deconstruct Genesis 2, 1 through 3, because within there, you have some truths about rest and delight, about rhythm, about what it means to be blessed, and what holy means in terms of the Sabbath. And so we're going to talk about those things, and we'll apply it to our lives. And the first is rest. For 6 days, God is hard at work, and he is creating all of creation, and then he gets to his magnus opus, which is he creates humans. And what happens after all of this is so interesting. By the seventh day, we're told that God rested. Now, a lot of times we read that and we don't really let it sink in, but I need you to let that sink in. God rested. And where you place the point of emphasis is important. It's not God rested. What you need to hear is God rested. God rested. Or is that sinking in? Yeah, but like Travis, I'm like a type A. I'm a really high capacity leader. Okay, you're not hearing me. God rested. Okay, Travis, but like God didn't have email. Okay, God rested. But Travis, like I run a startup. I'll rest when I die. I got to get this thing off the ground. No. God ran a startup. Maybe you heard of it. It's called creation. And even God, say it with me, rested. God rested. God rested. Now, what's interesting is this word rest. This word rest in the Hebrew is the Hebrew word Shabbat. Everyone say Shabbat. And it's where we get the English word Sabbath. And Shabbat has a few different layers to it. Shabbat can mean to stop. It can mean to cease. But what's also interesting about this word Shabbat is a layer that often doesn't get talked about, and that is to celebrate. So when it says that God rested, it doesn't necessarily paint this picture of like God's just worn out. After 6 days of creating, he just wants to sit on the couch and watch The Office for the 50th time on Netflix. Like he's tired. That's not the picture we're getting here. But the picture of Shabbat is not a God who rests because he's tired, but more so a God who rests because he wants to take a moment and delight in his work. It's less a picture of someone who's just worn out and plops down on the couch and just doesn't want to do any more work, but it's more of a picture. It's more of a picture like an artist who just finished their greatest masterpiece and they step back and they go, yeah, that's pretty good. That's good stuff. See, that's sort of the picture that we get of Shabbat here. So this idea of Sabbath is that you are taking a day, an entire day of your week, and you are trading doing for delight. You're trading a life of just doing more and more and more to taking a day and delighting more and more and more. You take this day and you delight in family, you delight in friends, you delight in really good food, you delight in a freshly brewed cup of coffee that you're drinking just because it's good, not because you need to wake up for the day that's ahead of you. And of course, you delight in the love of God for your life. It's more than just a day off. And I think that's really, really important for us to understand, because Sabbath is not just taking a day off. Have you ever gone into Monday more tired than you were at the end of Friday? And you felt like you were entering into the week at a deficit? Well, I think one of the main reasons we do this is because we mistake Sabbath for a day off, where on a day off, we don't do our vocational work, but instead we go to get groceries, we do our laundry, we work on projects around the house, we do all of these things, and in the end, we've sort of traded one version of busyness for a different version of busyness. And then you wonder why you're not tired or why you're not rested coming into Monday. It's because Sabbath isn't just you trading one version of busyness for the other version of busyness. It's a day where you stop doing and you content in where your life currently is, that you act like the project is finished even if it's not, and you simply delight in where you are in life. The picture of Shabbat is not God going, man, I'm really worn out, and I'm on my last pair of underwear, so I need to do some laundry today, and I need to go to Trader Joe's before it gets a little too crazy. Like that's not what Sabbath was. It was God stepping back from life and going, now that's good. Like, when was the last time you stepped back from the doing of your life and just delighted in where your life was? And so rest, Shabbat, is about not only resting, but more so celebrating your life and delighting in it. But it's not just about rest, it's also about rhythm. And in this moment in Genesis 2, God began to build a rhythm in the fabric of creation. A 6 days on and 1 day off rhythm. And it turns out that creation, all of creation, not just Christians, are operating on this rhythm. As a matter of fact, I did a study recently where zoo animals in this study were showing adverse behavior when they were on display for more than 6 days a week. Like, even the animals are in on Sabbath. Like, rhythm is a part of what it means to be human. When you lose your rhythm, you lose a little bit of your humanity. And so Sabbath is about reclaiming that rhythm that you were created to live with. And there's a rhythm to everything. There's rhythm to the seasons of the year. There's a rhythm in the day in and day out activities that we see, like the sun goes up, then the sun goes down, the moon rises, then the moon goes down. There's a rhythm to it. There's a rhythm to your breathing, right? You breathe in, you breathe out. You don't want to lose that rhythm. It's important, all right? We have a rhythm. There's a rhythm to your body. When you wake up in the morning, your body releases cortisol to begin to wake you up and give you energy to get through your day. And if you miss your alarm clock, it also releases adrenaline to help you really get out of bed and get you going. But then as you near the end of your day, your body begins to release melatonin. And it's your body's way of saying it's time to slow down. And we are heading towards our descent, towards going to sleep. There is a rhythm in everything, almost everything. The only thing that doesn't have rhythm is me on a dance floor. But everything else, there's a rhythm. There's a rhythm. And so when you feel flustered, when you feel frustrated in life, I wondered if you would just pause and go like, am I in rhythm? Chances are when you are most frustrated, it is likely connected to the fact you may be the most out of rhythm in your life. And so rest and Sabbath, it's this idea that we take this day once a week and we find the beat to life again. Because it's easy to get off beat every now and again. And every time we rest, we're reclaiming the rhythm of our souls. Every time we rest, we're reclaiming the rhythm of our souls. So it's not only about rest and not only about rhythm, but what else is Sabbath about? We continue in the text, and it says God does something fascinating in Genesis 2. He says, and God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy. Everyone say blessed. And everyone say holy. These two words are so important. And there's so much humming underneath each of these words that if you don't pause and lean into what it's saying, you're going to miss the importance of this word blessed and this other word holy. The first one is blessed. In Hebrew, the word that is used here is barak, pronounced like the president. Barak. God baraked creation. The idea behind barak, or a blessing, is that whatever God baraks, whatever he baraks, has life-giving abilities, that it has the ability to procreate. And God baraked three things in Genesis. First, God blessed or baraked living creatures, the animal kingdom, and he gave them the command to be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth. Then God baraked humans and said the exact same thing, be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. It's maybe the best commandment God gave in the Bible. Can I get an amen? And then God, some of you didn't get that. It's okay. Then God baraked a third time. And what's interesting is the first time he baraked animals, the second time he baraked humans, the third time he baraks a day, the seventh day, the Sabbath. And there's an ancient idea here, and the ancient idea is that just like animals and just like humans have the ability to procreate, so the Sabbath day has the ability to create new life in your life as well. Come on, isn't that awesome? No matter how much you love your work and fine-tune your rhythm and enjoy going to work, at the end of your week, you're empty. You've depleted your resources. And Sabbath is a day where you pause and you begin to rest and reclaim your rhythm, and God blesses that time so that when you return Monday, there's been new hope, new life, new vision, new focus, new passion birthed within you. And now this was so astounding to the original audience when this was first written. You need to remember, this wasn't written to people in San Francisco in 2019. This was written to a people group in the ancient Near East. And so if you lived in Mesopotamia or Babylon or Egypt, what the writer just said here is that God baraked a day. It would be so fascinating because in the ancient Near East, God was found in monuments and shrines and temples and altars and mountains and in the stars. But this writer says this God, Yahweh, is different. This God isn't found in monuments. Like this God is found in moments. Like this God is not found in things. This God is experienced in time. Maybe there's something spiritual when we're like, hey, I don't want to give my money to things, I want experiences. Have you heard similar statements like that? Maybe there's something sacred about that, like that resonates with all of our souls because it's in time that we can discover the nearness of God. But not only was time blessed as a procreator in our life to create new life and new vision, but we also see that God calls it holy. And why does this matter? Because like what I just talked about, it's time that God declares as holy. And do you know, in the Old Testament, this is the first time that God declares anything to be holy. He declares time to be holy. Time to be holy. And so the original idea of the Sabbath was that when you rest and delight, and when you reclaim the rhythm of your soul, that it will create new life in you as you wake up to God's nearness that is around you all the time. What is Sabbath? Sabbath is resting and delighting in your life. It's reclaiming the rhythm of your soul. And when you do this, it creates new life within you as you wake up to God's nearness that is around you all of the time. I read this thing that Pixar, I don't know if they still do it, but I thought it was fascinating. Their designers and their artists have this rule called the 20-20-20 rule. And that is that when you're in the middle of a work project and you're designing and you're creating, the 20-20-20 rule is that every 20 minutes, you need to look 20 feet away for 20 seconds and then return to your work. And the whole idea of that is that there's this power in simply looking away from your work, looking at something else for a certain amount of time, that when you return to your work, it's like your focus is re-energized and your creativity is refueled. It's a microcosm of what I'm talking about at a cosmic level, that all of us, we're wired to rest and for rhythm and to experience new life regularly. And the way we do that is we stop. We look away from our work. We refocus our eyes And when we come back Monday, more refueled and refocused for the week ahead. And so the question is, well, why does this matter for us? Like, why should we do this? And you should understand there are some churches or places and teachings I've heard on Sabbath. If you Google Sabbath, you're going to hear a variety of perspectives. Some people go, well, the Sabbath is commanded, and so you do it because it's like a rule to be followed. And then some say, well, Sabbath is an Old Testament thing, and like, Jesus doesn't ever really, or he mentions it, but not like exclusively in the New Testament, so we don't really need to take it that seriously. And I don't know where I stand exactly on it, but I would say this, like, you don't have to do Sabbath. You don't have to do what we're talking about here. You don't have to do what Genesis 2 talks about here. And it's not sin if you don't do Sabbath. So we can free ourselves from the shame of that. But just because it's not sin doesn't mean it's not smart. Like, I could drink 25 cups of coffee a day, and that's not sin. I'm just not sure it's very smart. And some of you are like, well, I can sleep 4 hours a day, and I'm good. Okay, well, ask the people around you. Like, it's not sin to only sleep 4 hours. You're just probably not going to be like the nicest person, And so when it comes to Sabbath, I think you should understand it's not so much a command as much as it's a gift. And God's like, here's a gift. It's yours to open if you want, and it's up to you. And I hope for the last few minutes I have together with you is just to share why I think this is important. Why I think we should unwrap this gift of Sabbath every week, once a day, or once a day every week. And that is first is this, that your Sabbath is your holy interruption that you didn't know you needed. Your Sabbath is your holy interruption. We Sabbath in order to interrupt the noise and chaos that 6 days of working and creating in our hearts and designing and building and meeting after meeting after meeting after pointless meeting and Gantt charts and KPIs and goal setting and all this, like, it just wears on you after a while. And Sabbath is the holy interruption that you need to rest and reclaim your soul and experience new life. I wonder if this is why the writer in Psalm 46, he wrote a very popular psalm, and that is, he says, be still and know that I'm God. Be still and know that I'm God. And what's interesting about the word the writer used for be still is that word can also be translated to let go. So you could also read this to read, let go and know that I'm God. And so Sabbath is that one day a week where you say, I'm going to let go. I'm going to let go and just trust that God is God. And if I don't respond to this email, the world will keep spinning. That everything will be okay. I said it's simple, not easy though. But it's the interruption that we all need. It's the interruption we all need. Every time we Sabbath, we allow peace and rest to fill the commotion and motion of our lives and replace the commotion and motion with contentment and with joy. But Sabbath is not only the interruption you didn't know you needed, but Sabbath is also your weekly invitation. It's your holy invitation. It's an invitation inward. It's an invitation to listen to your life and see what it says to you. It's a day that I face my wounds and I begin to heal, because let's be honest, sometimes we use busyness as a way of ignoring what's really going on. And Sabbath is a day where we say, no, I'm going to listen to my life. I'm going to listen to my body. I'm tense. I just feel on the verge of snapping. Why? What's going on? What's underneath that? It's the day I listen to my life. It's the day I face my anger and I begin to forgive. It's the day I face my despair and I begin to hope again. It's the day I face the real me inside of me so that I can see what's really going on. Because if my car doesn't turn on tomorrow, I'm not going to go give it a new paint job. I'm going to lift the hood, and I'm going to see what's going on. Sabbath is the day we lift the hood on our hearts, and we say, what's really going on? How am I doing? An author and TED speaker, he said, his name is Pico Iyer, he said in his book, Going Nowhere, which is a great book, by the way, he said this, in an age of distraction, nothing can feel more luxurious than paying attention. And I would go a little further with that. Nothing can be more healing than paying attention. Nothing can be more freeing than paying attention. Because aren't we in an age of distraction? We're in the golden age of distraction. And nothing can be more freeing than paying attention. Why do you think New Year's resolutions are such a thing? Because our souls are craving to just pay attention to see what's really going on. So Sabbath is not only your holy interruption, it's not only your holy invitation to look inwards, but it's also your holy identification. Sabbath is very much about identity. There's this portion in Scripture in a book called Deuteronomy, a man named Moses. He was writing to a nation called Israel, and they had been in the wilderness after being freed from Egypt for 40 years. They've been in the wilderness, moving towards what is called the Promised Land, and they're on the cusp of entering the Promised Land. And so Moses begins to give this new generation of Israelites kind of words and commands to set them up for success in this new chapter they're about to enter into. And here's what Moses says to them in verse 12 of chapter 5 of Deuteronomy. He says, "Observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy, as the Lord your God has commanded you. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath day of rest, dedicated to the Lord your God. And on that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, your oxen and donkeys and other livestock, and any foreigners living among you. All your male and female servants must rest as you do." And then here's where the money's at, verse 15. He says, "Remember that you were once slaves in Egypt, but the Lord your God brought you out with his strong hand and powerful arm. That is why your God has commanded you to rest on the Sabbath day." Why did God command Israel to rest on the Sabbath day? Not because that's the rules and I said so. That's not like what God's doing. He says, because you went for 400 years. If you don't know the story of the Israelites, they went 400 years in Egypt, where generation after generation after generation was under the thumb of Pharaoh, where they were just a cog in the machine of Egypt. They were seen as a bottom line. They only existed to meet a quota. They were only as good as their willingness to achieve. You can never really satisfy Pharaoh. Some of you are like, that's my boss. Like I just described who you work for. Some of you, I just described you and the way you treat yourself. And you see, after 400 years of being in Egypt, you begin to lose your identity. You begin to believe what Egypt and Pharaoh say about you. And you see, what's interesting about the nation of Israel is that they spent 40 years outside of Egypt. And what becomes abundantly clear when you navigate their story is that although they were no longer in Egypt, Egypt was most definitely still in them. And so what did Moses say? He said, hey, you got to take this day. You got to Sabbath because Egypt is still in you. And if you're not careful, the pull of Egypt, the whisper of Pharaoh, will try and pull you back where you were. And I don't know about you, but sometimes throughout the week, I find myself drifting. Sometimes throughout my week, I find myself experiencing the pull of Egypt. I'm very much a recovering workaholic. And I feel myself throughout the week feeling like my only worth is connected to my ability to achieve and produce. And there's times throughout my week where I want to believe that my self-worth and my net worth are the same thing. And there's times throughout the week where Pharaoh begins to whisper and attempt to convince me that to admit that I have limitations is to admit weakness and is weakness in and of itself. And so I need a day a week where I rebel against Egypt. And I'm not talking about the Egypt around me. I'm talking about the Egypt within me. And there's days I need to defy Pharaoh, and I'm not talking about the pharaohs around me. I'm talking about the Pharaoh within me, because you are creating the world around you from the material of the world within you. And so I need to find victory and freedom from Egypt and Pharaoh within me if I'm ever going to find freedom and victory from the Egypts and Pharaohs around me. Man, I need that day. I'm thrown off the whole week if I don't have my day. Ask Jenna. If Finley could talk, she would tell you it's true as well. I need that day where I rest and I reclaim and I allow new life to be birthed in me. I need the interruption, I need the invitation, and I need the identification. So can I ask you, when was the last time you truly rested the way we're talking about today? And I'm not talking about, well, I took like an hour here and like 2 hours. No, I'm like, when was the last time you took a full 24 hours and you pretended the work was done even if it wasn't, and you just delighted in your life? When was the last time you just stopped and began to reclaim the rhythm of your soul and asked your song, is my soul playing to the beat of the right song today, right now? When was the last time you allowed new life to be birthed in you and hope and vision for the future? I mean, when was the last time you did that for one day? Let me go a little further. When was the last time you did that 2 weeks in a row? You know, chances are for all of us, very few of us practice this thing called Sabbath, and yet it may be the gift that your soul's been craving, and it's been there all along. I want to encourage you today that Sabbath reminds us that you are not a human doing, but you are a human being. And freedom and rest and restoration begins when you are okay just being once a week. So what do we do? For some of us, you're listening to me and you're laughing in your head right now. Because you're like, there's no way I can take one full day off a week. Travis, you don't know my boss. You don't know my company. You don't know the work that I do. There's no way I can take one day off a week to really do this. Maybe it's time to quit your job. Maybe it's time to find a job where you can do that then. You know, some of you are like, but this is what I'm doing. Okay, let me ask you a more important question. Who do you want to be in 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years? Like, who are you becoming? Because that's going to matter at the end of your life far more than what you did. Maybe it's not you need to quit your job. That's drastic, right? But what if you just need to manage your time and start saying no to some things? Like maybe you need to stop creating a start doing list and you need to start creating a stop doing list. I need to stop doing this so that I can get my time back. Because there's a lie about time, and that lie is, and we tend to support it by saying, oh, these things keep taking my time. No. Nothing takes your time. Time is only given away by you. And so what does it look like for you to manage your time and say, nope, I'm reclaiming Sabbath. I'm reclaiming my humanity so that I can become the person God's called me to be. So I can wake up on Monday and just be like, yes, I feel good. Bring on the week. I'll close with this. Jesus wasn't really good at all with slogans. He would say things like, if you want to follow me, come and die, and not like, it's like not the best elevator pitch, Jesus. But one time he nailed it. In John 10:10, he says this. I love this translation. Jesus says, I have come so you can have life that is truly life. Which of course means that there is a lot of people who are alive but not really living. And I fear there's a lot of Christians who are alive, but you're not really living. And trust me, you know when you're alive but not really living. Because you definitely know when you're really living. And I'm sure there's all sorts of reasons, but I wonder if sometimes we've overcomplicated it a little bit. That we list of all these reasons, maybe the primary reasons that so many are alive but not really living is because they haven't learned how to just slow down enough to get their soul back. They haven't learned to slow down long enough to just be with Jesus. So may we be different. May the world be envious about our courage to rest. May we let Sabbath interrupt our lives. May we let Sabbath invite us into peace. And may we let Sabbath remind us where our identity lies. That you are loved not because of what you do, but because of who you are. May we release being a human doing. And may we be a community that reclaims what it looks like to actually live every day as a human